Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and we are reading and exploring the Phaedo together. Now, before we go on today, a few updates. There is now a Patreon up. If you want to support the channel in any way you can, you're welcome to do so there. One of the options is for dream analysis, which is just in the trial phase at the moment, but as we are learning about how to understand the art of the logos, it can be applied to our dreams to understand those two things that we are discovering are our two fundamental human questions. What is our highest destiny? What is the nature of reality, mind and self, and logos, but also its shadow? What are the problems that we're having that prevent us from being most free, that prevent us from climbing that ladder of philosophy most ideally and with most excellence? So dreams give you messages about that in the same way that we have to explore philosophy, real philosophy, not by simply interviewing people's opinions, as a lot of podcasts do, but we have to be in the text. We have to have our nose in the text. That's part of being in the game, because this kind of text, the kind of way of being of Socrates, that is of course being recorded by Plato and accounted by Phaedo. This logos of Socrates communicates the self-logos to us. It's kind of a mean between us and the divine, or us and the higher self, the ideal self. Well, beyond even the idea of self, the one self. So we can both look at this shared mean so that communication can pass. The mean analogy, the famous one that we talk about in philosophy, is Diotima was one of the spiritual teachers of Socrates, and Socrates taught Glaucon. So Socrates was the focus of both people, through which the Dharma or the teaching of philosophy can be shared. So too, this text is our shared activity or shared focused. Socrates is being reflected in the text. We put our mind to the text and we do what we can to match that level of intelligence, that level of art of the logos of Socrates, and we do so by focusing on the text. We're receiving the terms, receiving the puzzles from self through the logos. That is important. We have to have our nose in the text to be in the game. Otherwise, you're doing something else. You ain't doing philosophy. You ain't doing your proper work here as a human being. Now, equally so, dreams. Dreams communicate the self-logos. There's a level of mastery of the art of the logos. There's a level of benefit, intelligence, providence, care that's communicated through our dreams, therefore, but are more personally tailored. So the mythology of the Phaedo kind of will apply universally. The Minotaur that is slayed, this guy here, this little stuffy here, this will represent something that is that all people will have to slay, have to deal with, have to address through the art of the logos. The labyrinth to reach the Minotaur will have a significance for all of us. The arguments of Simmias and Cebes, Harmonia and Cadmus. This should apply to all of us. And lately we've been talking about how wondrous and curious it is that the information Socrates is telling us about our world and our problems and what is needed to solve them applies even now, 2,500 years after he said it. One of the reasons is because it has a universal application, whereas dreams, the kinds of mythology, the kinds of symbols, metaphors, similes, characters will have a personal significance to you. It'll be Joe Smith from your first grade class that will steal your cake, and not a minotaur, for example. So you can say, well, part of the game is therefore having your nose in a text, which is what we do together, but also having your nose in dream analysis. As we learn the dialectic, we want to try our best to apply the dialectic, the art of the logos, to unpacking the language of dreams in the same kind of way we're using our understanding of the logos and the dialectic to unpack the mysteries of this text. But of course, this can be done a lot. This can be more easily achieved when you have somebody who has study and practice in the art of midwifery themselves. But you can do it yourself, you can do it with your friends, but it can be helpful to have a midwife. So for that reason, and as a attempt to keep this channel going, sustaining, alive, keep it moving forward, I'm offering one-on-one dream analysis through the Patreon for those who are open to it. Once every 2 weeks, I think, is one of the tiers. Of course, you don't have to take me up on that offer. You can just support the channel because you think sharing the art of the logos, discovering that which we can discover now, is worth doing, is worth sharing with the world. If you do, I thank you very much. Also, another bit of news. As we were talking about in the chat before recording today, some of the old videos from somebody who has himself mastered the art of the logos match to the level of being of Socrates, Dr. Pierre Grimes. His older videos are sometimes not the best quality, not the best audio quality. So one of the things I'm thinking about doing for this channel is polishing up the audio. I'm a musician and a sound engineer, so I have some experience in that side of things, polishing up the audio and having a watch along. So maybe once a week, take a break from the Phaedo to apply what we're learning to our enjoyment of those fantastic seminars, lectures, and even interviews that the late great Pierre Grimes has left us, with some extra work that I'll put in behind the scenes to polish up the audio to make it lovely to listen to. So if you're interested in that, you can join us on Twitch for that day when we do that. And I think Twitch will allow those videos to stay up for a week or so. So if you can't make it live, you can catch up in the week, but also you can gain access to those videos in an archive on Patreon. One of the tiers is to gain access to those watch along videos, so you can watch them whenever you want. So we'll watch along, we'll take some notes, we'll make some comments, and we'll apply what we've been learning together in this channel to better understanding those. Dr. Grimes is amazing, and every time you go back to watch them, you'll see something new. I've been studying his work for 20 years, and every time I go back to one of those old talks or lectures, or particularly the PRS series are really cool, I see something new each time. And of course, we're learning why that is, because we're seeing one of the aspects of the dialectic is when you get to the end, you go back to the start and you see it in a new way. And having gone through that process, you've learned more, you've grown more, you can see more, meaning you have what you need to do the dialectic again. So it's a evolving or a rolling forward process. Keeps rolling forward, you can keep improving. And it's very Usia-like in that way. Usia is the aspect of our consciousness, our mind, that can turn around and know itself. But also, it has the ability to turn around upon itself and towards its higher cause. In other words, spiral upwards. That's what we've been looking at in the text. So applied to the dialectic, you turn around on the subject, you see it in a new way, but having gone through that, you've upgraded yourself, you've evolved, meaning the next time you approach it, you can look at it in a new way. Therefore, it's a spiraling up through ousia, through the logos, to our higher and higher states of being, culminating, of course, in what I think Socrates calls pure rest itself. In other words, the end of our spiritual goal. Something that we hope to achieve in this lifetime as our work, so we can evolve to a next level of being after this lifetime. So this reflection on causes. What is the cause of this? That's what Socrates is describing for us in our reading. He said, well, I started by just looking through my physical senses, but I was curious why things were the way they are. What were the cause of things? Why did people get bigger? Is it just addition and subtraction? You add meat and then you get taller because you eat meat, that's addition. Of course, it doesn't work that way. So Socrates is reflecting on causes himself, and we're seeing how did he transition from physics or regular learning to philosophy, realizing there has to be a greater cause other than physical things adding and subtracting into each other. That causes two-ness, that causes greatness. Why are things the way they are? And in our reading up until now, Socrates says, hey, you have to transition from, well, first of all, you have to become a lover of learning, follow that part of your soul, more than lover of desires, lover of riches, more than lover of fame and honor, celebrity, right? The inward desiring, the outward moving. No. Cherish and value and be ruled by your reasoning part of the soul. Become a lover of learning. But that's not good enough, because you can stay in the physical world. You have to recognize, all physical things and all intelligent things, like us, seek being, seek truth, that which is eternal, true, pure, deathless, that which is the paradigm or model upon which the physical world is based. In other words, we have to transition from our physical senses through which we perceive the world of becoming to that kind of sense called ousia that can turn about upon its own nature and experience the realm of being. So it's a kind of self-reflection. What is the cause? Based on causes. So very similar to the dialectic that has the potential to spiral upwards to higher dimensions of being, making philosophy, as Socrates points out, the one true spiritual discipline. Many are the staff bearers, few are the true spiritual mystics. And those are those who practice philosophy correctly. And as philosophy is our intended function in this world, the true mystics are those who are doing their right action, doing their proper function as a human being. Here we go, here's the quote. Many are the staff bearers, but few are the inspired mystics. These are, according to my opinion, none other than those who have practiced philosophy correctly. Okay, and the third kind of ousia, so we have a turning about upon yourself, the first one. The spiraling upwards to one's cause, second one. But also the kind of fullness or self-sustaining power that you get from ousia upon yourself overflows, is a kind of perfection that overflows, allowing you to be even more perfect through creation. Perfection without also creation would kind of be a little bit less than perfect. Like Dr. Grimes would say, if you do a sculpture of the man, but you cut his nuts off, it won't be a perfect sculpture. There has to be that potential to ability to create that would make something even more perfect. So that's the ousia that unfolds and overflows. We've been talking about the necessity in our world to clean up certain language that contains falsehoods like sin. Sin is actually missing the mark. It's not a bad or evil thing, but it's been usurped by people who've given it a mistranslation for unjust reasons, to manipulate and enslave. So what was an archery term, amatia, to miss the mark, has become, sinning is evil. Sinning means you're a bad person. You're not noble and divine. There's something innately wrong with you. So this is how we can be manipulated through language. One example is selfish and selfless. To meet your self goals, which is our intended function, has been bastardized by those who want to make you feel bad for doing it. Selfish. Oh, and what's good? To cut yourself down. Selfless. To not seek the goals of the self. Now, of course, Socrates is saying, hey, all things primarily seek union with being. Secondarily, because of the truth and innate truthness of that task, it has a beautiful persuasive effect to help remind others of that task. He talked about two sticks. They can't actually be equal in the physical world, but they seek equality itself. And we have to start by seeing through our senses to notice, hey, those two sticks look equal to me, but from a different angle or from a different person, don't look equal. So what is this equal itself? Because the sticks ain't got it, because they're different. Whereas equality itself, I would never say could be unequal, but equal sticks could be, depending on your angle. So what's the thing that is the thing itself? The noun, equality, before it's used as an adjective to describe sticks. Same thing with beauty. You start by noticing beautiful physical things as a human being. I mean, you could say, well, we start by experiencing beauty itself before we are born as a human, but as human beings, we start by noticing beautiful things. Socrates says, hey, that its purpose is to get you to think about what beauty itself is, remind you of your purpose here to reach beauty itself, beauty being one of the aspects of being. And then later on, what we just recently read is Socrates saying, hey, the logos that I'm seeking to master through the art of the logos is for me. People who claim to be wise want to persuade others of their wisdom, right? If you want to be wise through religion or through faith, no one's going to believe you because no one cares about your dumb opinions unless you can convince others, right? Famously, Joseph Smith, I think the guy's name is, the Mormon, was chastised for a long time. He kept lying and kept making up religions until he found one that actually convinced people, and then all of a sudden he's a prophet. Same thing with, well, that's kind of the currency of this late stage capitalism we're in. Most of the world is owned by a few monopolies. So if you want to try and break through to make your own business, a lot of people try and do something outrageous to gain attention, like Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, you name it. And then once they get attention, they have to convince people that they are wise. If nobody believes Andrew Tate's nonsense, he has no power. He can't strut around as though he's not knowing. If If Jordan Peterson doesn't convince people that he knows things, he's a wise man, if he can't convince others, then what's to say that he's wise? Because he looks through the physical senses. He looks to lobsters for truth. He looks for physical examples. But in philosophy, we don't look. Right, in the chat, he's a sophist. Interesting, yeah. So, in philosophy, we don't suffer from that. We realize actually truth has its own existence. It's not a matter of who believes you at all. In fact, the Phaedo we're reading, the court of Athens didn't believe Socrates, that he was a gift from God to share this philosophy with us. And Socrates says, hey, while the sophists, people who claim to be philosophers, claim to be wise and understanding, want to convince others primarily, that's a secondary effect. I want it for me. I want myself to believe the things that I've come to. And he said, hey, if it's true, it'll naturally be beautiful and persuasive, secondarily. So in other words, meeting your self-goals, whether it's the sticks seeking beauty itself, whether it's beautiful things seeking beauty itself, or whether it's us seeking truth through the logos, it's for you first. It's not selfish bad. That's bullshit. Slave language. To get you to cut down your self-goals to be enslaved. In fact, that's your first goal, and because of the overflowing nature of ousia, that third kind, so once you have your self-goals, you can reflect on your causes and reach being, but also you can ousia and generate, naturally be persuasive. As a secondary effect, we can see that the word selfish doesn't make any sense. We should replace selfish and selfless with self-ousia. Because self-ousia means that your purpose is to reach self-ousia, which is your self-goal. Because self-ousia is the hyparxis of being. It's beauty itself, it's justice itself, it's truth, it's reality, it's eternal, and it might even be the true nature of the soul. That's your first job. Okay? And then there's another kind of ousia where once we're out of the body, once we're in being, hopefully we've gotten there through philosophy, through the art of the logos, so we can apply that art of the logos even to that experience and ousia upon our higher cause. Or we can ousia towards others, help others, generate ousia in the generative way, creation, to be more perfect by also creating. And you can't do that unless you have self-ousia. Or rather, the closer you are to your self-goals, the better you can help others. So you don't help others by being selfless, thumbs up. It's the opposite. You help others by being self-full, or rather self-full of self-ousia. So throw out that language and bring in this new language. Right, self-thought, self-recursive, self, yes. So, how do we awaken that self-ousia, which exists in the realm of being, when all of us start, as human beings, looking through our physical senses? That sixth sense of self-ousia needs to be awakened, which is one of the reasons why this channel is called Awakening Philosophy. We have to awaken self-ousia. How do we do that? Well, we have to start by being interested in learning more than our desires, more than our desire for pleasures, more than our desire for fame. Love learning. But then we have to somehow go from learning about the physical world, learning about physics or tree frogs, to learning about being. How do we make that jump? Well, that ousia, or that kind of the dialectics nature, the ousia, where you revert upon yourself and your higher causes. That kind of ousia seems to be the kind of reflection that can take you from not just reflecting on what you're seeing, but the cause of what you're seeing. If that person's beautiful and that person's beautiful, where does beauty come from? It can't be just there. And if I think this person's beautiful and the next guy doesn't, then what am I seeing? How did I get reminded? Or what am I remembering? Search for causes. And of course, nice. And of course, this also is understanding. One of the things about the art of the logos, it gives us what we need to understand our true nature, which would be this reversion of causes that we're seeing Socrates account for us. How did he get into it? How did he awaken self-ousia? How did he get into philosophy? How did he separate a soul from the body? Because he's saying, hey, no one was talking about this when I was a kid. There was one guy, Anaxagoras, who mentioned, oh, maybe mind is the cause of all things, but he didn't really have it nailed down. He didn't talk about the cause of mind, what keeps mind together, and then he quite often jumped into the physical explanation, pointing to physical causes for things. So I was let down by the one guy who seemed to be giving the idea of mind, which is a cause higher than the physical. So if his doctrine of philosophy that we've been learning for ourselves, separating the soul from the body, and experiencing death many times, practicing it as an art, getting there through understanding, dianoia, not understanding of the physical world, understanding of being, and verifying that understanding, indirect experience, nous, making it a spiritual and rational system. Applying it to our virtues, desiring the art of the logos, holding on to the truth of the art of the logos in our outward movements, using the art of the logos in our planning. If this is what makes the virtues, the lack of the art of the logos making it vice. And the art of the logos necessarily is the logos about being? If this virtuous way of living is necessary so that when we die, we can be happy and confident we've done everything we can and we've prepared ourselves for a best reincarnation, we're going to a good place, a better place, which is what we read last time, then it all comes down to learning the logos applied to being. So how do we get into the game? How do we start? Because I've seen a lot of Netflix shows. There aren't a lot of characters on these sitcoms who come in and start asking questions about being. Very rarely does Kramer barge in the door and say, hey, Jerry, you're engaged in dramas about the physical world, but what do you think was the cause? I've never seen a character like that, in fact. In Friends, there's Phoebe. She's the wacky hippie, but I don't remember her ever talking about being. Asking the kind of questions like Xenophanes is asking us, what is the whole of experience, seeing, hearing, and experience? Or what is even watching the whole? I haven't heard Phoebe talk about that. She could have. The writers could have done that. If this is what it means to be the true hero, I don't remember Batman or Superman or Spider-Man ever asking this question. If he really wants to save people, shouldn't he be asking this question? If Superman is really about justice, shouldn't he be asking this question because this is where justice itself is? I don't see it on TV. I don't see it in movies. But we necessarily need someone to ask that question. We have the Xenophanes koan, the Xenophanes mantra or question we repeat to help us. And thankfully we have Socrates to start to kick the game off for us. But what started Socrates in this game? How did he get into it when no one around him was talking in this way? Now this is fascinating. We can really relate to him. Again, it's so universal. It's the universal paradigm, not just in the laws of nature and the laws of understanding and spiritual growth, but the laws of being human. The difficulties Socrates faced are very similar to the difficulties many of us are facing. Thankfully, we have the internet and we have people like Dr. Pierre Grimes or who can share information. We have the Balboa translations. We have this channel, of course, who can ask these sorts of questions. We have Mindy Mandel's All About Platonism channel. So we have a few more because of the technology and the YouTube and the internet. But even to be attracted to those sorts of videos, the greatest videos I've ever seen only have like 200 views in the last 20 years. It's amazing. Whereas, a Mr. Beast video of how many people can stand in this box for a month to win $1 million gets 20 million views. It's very rare. So, what woke Socrates up? What allowed him to make the jump from the world of becoming, the physical senses, to the realm of ousia, to the realm of being? What changed him from a lover of learning, philomathesis, to a lover of wisdom, philosophia? Socrates says, hey, I'm going to give you my personal account. You pick out the pieces. You put the puzzle together. You find what's relevant and present me with an argument of why the soul must be immortal. And what's the other word he says? Not just immortal, but balloons. But indestructible, I think it was. It must be... Looking at the text here, because it's important to nail down the text. That's why we have our nose in the text. Yes, immortal and indestructible. So in this argument that from Simmias, Socrates says, hey, you need to be able to know and demonstrate or prove, understand with the logos that the soul is immortal and indestructible. Otherwise, it would make no sense to not fear death. In other words, it would be intelligent to fear our destruction upon our physical death, unless we can know and prove that the soul is immortal and indestructible. But Socrates says, I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to give you my personal account of how I transitioned into philosophy and how I did it with no one else around. Earlier we were talking about dream analysis and how it's much easier and more fun when you have a midwife, philosophical midwife, asking you the questions of the dialectic to guide you through an understanding of your dreams, through the art of the logos, through the structure of the dialectic. But you can do it yourself. Socrates is saying, I did it myself. You can, provided you got your nose in the text, provided you're dedicated to the virtues, which is to do this at all times, seek the mastery of the logos at all times, in everything you do. Everything. What?
Wow.
Then you should be able to do it yourself.
Wow.
But it's easier and more fun with another person sometimes. And Socrates saying, I'm going to show you how I did it myself so you can pull out the necessary pieces. You can pull out the terms, the structures, apply it to everything we've learned. We're on page 60 something now, 65 or 69 or something like that. Now, so if we've got a lot of material, use my personal anecdote to pull out what's relevant, pull out from my mythology what's relevant to the dialectic, to your understanding. So what mythology is for, to represent in drama what's true in the logos. And then you lead me. And of course we've seen why Socrates is doing it in that way, because he says, I need to leave behind not a bee sting after I die as a bee does, but the best thing. We even said that's what's needed to be the ideal hero. And today we're saying that's what's needed for perfection. If you can think of like a person without his reproductive organs is not as perfect a person as someone who does have it. In other words, perfection can be made more perfect. In other words, it's not perfection really, without the ability to create, to generate, to pass on that which is good and true and beneficial. Art. So not having the art of the hero, the art of the logos, but to be able to pass it on would be more perfect, would be more of an ideal hero. So this is probably, it's a hypothesis. We don't have to know, we just have to be curious and hold it as a question for why he's giving us his personal story. So we can play, we can learn the art of logos ourselves. That's what we're doing. Now, he's outlined his first search for causes, that ousia upon not just oneself, but the higher dimension, the dialectic, the ousia upon causes to spiral upward, from learning to philosophy and beyond. And how he was let down. We could also say, hang on a second, he said if you get let down by people you think are trustworthy, you can end up hating humans. And if you get let down by the logos, the arguments you thought are true and trustworthy, like humans, metaphor, you might end up hating and reviling the logos. So how come Socrates didn't get let down? His past teachers in physics didn't actually answer his question about causes. What's the cause for him being here? Oh, bones. Hang on a second. Bones and sinews? No, hang on, I've got a mind. What about that? Even the teachers who he did trust, like Anaxagoras, didn't really get there either. So hey, shouldn't he have ended up reviling and hating the logos, having the worst defect of the soul, and end up not reaching truth and being? Not doing his purpose, reincarnating negatively and living a poor life? Because that's what he said could happen. He didn't. He said, hey, that happens if you blame the logos or blame people and do not blame your lack of art, of judging people, of judging the logos. So he must have had a good character after he was let down by the teachers, and there was no one else around talking in this way. If there's no humans around talking this way, humans must stink. There's nothing good in humans. Or if all of the logos I trusted, all of the reasoning and understanding I trusted let me down, then maybe there's nothing good and knowable in understanding. He didn't do that, thankfully. So what did he do instead? After his being letting down in his first search for causes, what did someone of Socrates' character, even before being a philosopher, what did he do instead? And how can we use that as a guide? What was Socrates' second search for the cause? That's where we are, and that's where we'll jump in. So let's jump into the text and have some fun. Okay, so this is where we were. Isn't this exciting? We're hearing Socrates' account on his last day of what his life was like. This is where I was as a kid. I really wanted to get wisdom, so I got into physics like we do. I was looking for causes and I realized that doesn't really answer the causes. Do you think I'm sitting here because of my physical bones and joints? No, I think it's the best thing to do, which means I have a mind. You got to account for that. Not only that, I have a model for what I think is good, so I can judge whether or not this is best. Also, I want to make sure it's just. So there's a mind, there's a model, there's the model applied for goodness and best and justice. Otherwise, my bones and sinews would be running my little ass off to somewhere else if I didn't think it was good to stay here. You gotta account for those things, says Socrates. Says a young boy, Socrates. So interesting, but he said, hey, I would be willing to follow. If somebody gave me a good account of causes, I would be willing to follow them wherever they led me. Now this is interesting because we've also talked about those who are persuasive, those who have the image of philosophy, sophists, they're called. Thank you in the chat for that word. Sophists. Don't they think of the sophists in the world? The Petersons, Jordan Petersons, or the Andrew Tates. I picked those two because they're kind of like comically missing the mark. Often on purpose because they're audience locked, as we say. They know where their bread is buttered. They want to give the answers that the audience are going to pay for. So, but especially people like Tate and of that ilk. So what makes them appealing? They offer causes. This is why you're not happy. This is the cause. You're not tidying your room. Or you're not alpha enough. You need to go to the gym more. You need to be more... And often... but by the way, isn't that what politicians do? They try and get people to believe them by saying this is the cause of your problems and this will be the cause of your excellence. Hey, if you want excellence, the cause would be cutting taxes. Oh, by the way, what I mean is I'm cutting taxes for the rich and maybe a penny or two for you, but really I'm making you poorer because wealth is relative. If I make millionaires billionaires, you are suddenly way poorer than you used to be. It's a scam. Equally so, what's another trick they use? Oh, what's the cause of your problems? That's the cause of your excellence. What's the cause of your problems? Oh, people who are different than your cave, your family, your group. Inside cave good, outside cave bad, scary, from our early evolution. So immigrants, or people like Andrew Tate push it a little bit further. I realize my audience are men. Oh, you know what's the cause of your problems? Women. Yeah, women. So sexism, racism, that kind of thing. That's all part of fascism. But what is it? They're trying to define causes, which is fascinating because what do we do in philosophy? We want to reach our excellence and we want to remove our problems. And how do we do that? By looking at causes. They're doing the same kind of thing, but with the wrong terms and manipulating that drive. This is the no, we couldn't say evil, but as close to evil as you can get, I suppose. The injustice behind this. The mainstream propaganda news networks and the politicians and stuff, they are manipulating our good desire for causes. to get us to work against finding our causes. Our natural impulse to reach our benefit, remove our problems, reach our excellence. These two things. Climb this ladder up to reach what's true. They're manipulating that great impulse, the thing that allows humans to reach their goal, the thing that makes us rational, the thing that we're evolved, that we necessarily allows us to evolve. They manipulate this by offering us this. Oh, you want to reach what's true? You want to reach your highest excellence? You want to be good and happy? You want to feel like you're being righteous and just? Well, I'm going to appeal to what feels true. I'm going to be angry and abusive because that's the shadow of being like your parents looked when they seemed to be most knowing. I'm going to tie you here using your impulse for this. What could they be doing? Out of the logos. Reflection through causes, which we call the dialectic, using the logos as terms, not the pathologos. Reflection on causes through the dialectic structure, using the logos to reach our destiny, integrated into our being makes it virtue, reach that more true dimension of reality, being. And of course, this is what's true, that's what's false, and humans are somewhere in between, a combination of true and false. And that's a good example. Fascists and Jordan Petersons or Andrew Tates in the world, and politicians and right-wingers and that sort of thing. There's a little bit of truth. They offer causes. They claim to help you be happiest. They claim to help solve your problems. So there's the truth element. But what's false is all of the terms are actually these rungs of the ladder, not these rungs. That's a combination of true and false. So you can use that to do a dialectic on modern politics or modern entrepreneurialism or life coaching or that kind of thing, or what philosophy isn't, because these are all people who claim to be wise, and philosophy is the love of wisdom. So Socrates would be in here, all those kinds of people who have money and power by convincing others to believe them would be in this category. So you can have fun with that, understanding the world around us, but also an understanding we need to apply to ourselves first. We don't want to listen to that voice that sounds true because it yells at us and it puts us down. Or it blames humans for problems and not our lack of art of the logos. Notice when we realize, oh, it's not people, it's not the logos. It's not that there's no reality, there's no being, there's no understandable truth, there's no dialectic. It's not that. It's that we haven't mastered it. We haven't developed the art of the logos. Shifts it away from blame to something that puts the power back in our hands. Empowering. And the more of us wake up to this, the more we can demand that of the people who want to pretend to be knowers, the more that we can demand that of people in authority whose job it is to benefit us. That's what politicians are for. Teachers are for, to benefit the student. The doctor, if the doctor prescribes medicines that benefit him and not the patient, that's malpractice. The more we understand the art of the logos, the more we can demand it of the people who should be functioning for our benefit. That's their job. But what do we call it when a doctor acts for his benefit and not from the art of medicine for his patient's benefit? Corruption. Isn't our world littered with corruption? Causing genocide and war and wealth inequality and cost of living crisis and destruction of the planet. You name it. Throw a rock anywhere, you'll see a list of terrible but easily solvable problems that aren't being solved. Absolutely. Can we unify all those problems? And what would be needed to solve them? That's philosophy. That's the art of the logos. That's what makes Socrates the heroic character he is. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool that we can understand. One of the things that has been mentioned is, if philosophy is the love of wisdom, but us that are getting into loving wisdom are really loving understanding, because understanding is this ladder to reach being that you understand through the virtue of wisdom. And by the way, if we reach these states of reality with understanding, understanding can allow you to go higher than even experience. Could we say that we need a new subject at school? Not philosophy, the love of wisdom, but the love of understanding. Because that's our method. Hey, wisdom is about the experience, being. But what's more real? The experience or your reflection upon that to learn from it so you can go beyond that experience? Isn't this learning? Therefore, what's greater? Philosophia or philodianoia? So I think that's what maybe we should call ourselves, philodianoia. That's the subject we need to introduce everywhere. How do we understand the truth? How do we understand this? How do we understand our cause of our problems? How can we use understanding to go even beyond enlightenment experiences? Isn't this fun? Understanding gives us this. Do you love understanding as much as me? Are you a philodianoia? I hope so. Right, so back in the text. So interesting, we just talked about those two sections. Our excellence and our problems, and how those who want to convince us, give us a distorted version of that. They're not ignoring causes, they're just assigning it to not wealth inequality, not the corruption of the people in power. Oh, poor people are at fault. Oh, why is there a housing crisis? Oh no, because of workers' wages. Workers are not being exploited enough. Trickle down economics, right? Give more money to the rich. That will help things. When? So, what is the cause of what is actually addressing the cause of our problems would be, the metaphor would be medical treatments. What's the cause of excellence? Physical training in the body. We're looking for the analogy. Medical treatments for fixing illnesses, physical training to reach your excellence of your body. By the way, those two words was dropped right before having a dialectical conversation. Dialectic was dropped in here, one of the first times it's used. And then shortly after, he drops the words beyond belief, but also he drops the words, should be pretty soon after, I think. Oh yes, fate and destiny. Fate is our problems, destiny, destined logos is our excellence. So Socrates, in his first search for causes, realized two things are made two by adding them together, bringing them close. But then that pair is made from one pair to two different things by moving it away. So adding and subtracting can't be the cause, because they both can't be the cause of two-ness. Did some contemplation, talked about the study of physics, had his own theory for where knowledge came from opinions. Came across Anaxagoras here. Right. Who talked about the mind that offered him a way up, but then he realized even Anaxagoras fell down. Started talking about sinews and bones. But hey, my sinews and bones would have been moving their way towards Megara or Boeotia if I didn't think it was more just and more beautiful to leave this prison cell. And by the way, the causes are one thing, including mind, but the condition, that without which a cause couldn't even be a cause, is entirely another. So there's another level above these causes of mind that he's neglecting. And by the way, these causes in mind must be held together by something. So I would have followed them the same way many young people follow Republican Party, and they make it their identity, and they put flags on their cars, and they think they're being wise by abusing people who look different or from a different country or are poor. Right? They're given a way of expressing themselves. They follow them, just like people follow Peterson and Tate and stuff like that. He would have followed if somebody offered a legitimate cause that satisfied him. He would have also followed them. So one way, these prejudiced or fascist people who are manipulated to act against their own interest and given a way of being based on hate and attack and ignoring true causes, ignoring systemic inequality and ignorance, lack of the art of the logos, in one way, they're very much like Socrates. They're following the sorts of people who give them a cause that satisfies them for some reason. But doesn't satisfy us because it's not true. And we can see it's harmful. Can get us to act against our own interests. And our own interest, has already been mentioned, is to reach truth and phronesis. So we can't stay at the level of physical things. So, do you want to hear about my second quest for the cause, CBs? CB says, I do wish it above all else. That's where we are. Now, we're going to jump into... so we can read it in the lobe first. Because sometimes it's a little bit easier to read it that way. Here we go. And then jump into the Balboa to get the right terms that we need. Okay, here we go. Socrates' second search for cause. So, without mind, Socrates says, well, what keeps things together? They must look for like Atlas, some dude holding the world up. That's why the world is the way it is. I would gladly be the pupil of anyone who'd teach me the nature of such a true cause, that which does embrace and hold all things together. Cults. Right? Cults, religious groups, political groups, alpha podcasts, red pill groups. Are they all people who are pupils and follow around those who give causes? This is the cause of your problems. This is the cause of your problems, the devil. This is the cause of your health and excellence. Jesus, the Koran, Judaism, Joseph Smith, this magic, I don't know, rock, Heaven's Gate, the aliens, Republicans, the poor and immigrants, those who can't defend themselves, those without money, sexists, or women, or Eve caused the problems because he convinced Adam to eat the apple, all that crap. Jordan Peterson, because you didn't tidy your room. Andrew Tate, because women are terrible. That's the reason why. We want causes. Even Socrates would gladly be a pupil of those people. So now we're seeing one of the reasons why the level of development we're at as human beings has the power and force. We're seeing the cause of why those things have the power and force that they do have. If we are at the level of group thinking, others to others using the dialectic, but we have not yet reached the logos. So using the dialectic, let's just make a quick note. So our hypothesis is there is a sound and understandable paradigm called the logos. That's Socrates. He's saying we have to hold on to that. Well, that means, let's bring this up. Well, it would apply to everything, including our own personal development, but also human development. Therefore, if we can recognize, hey, our world is fighting in conflict based on groups. Zionists versus Palestinians, or Muslims versus Christians, or Republicans versus Democrats, or you name it. How can we understand this level, groups and division, using the dialectic? Well, let's use the dialectic and say, hey, if everything dialectic or human problems, right? And aren't most countries run by groups? Isn't politicians, like when you go to a doctor, you don't say, vote for my doctor, we do medicine this way and we're better, and vote for us. No, it's just medicine. You either know it or you don't. Flying a plane, we have our own special way of flying planes that's based on religion. You don't hear that in aviation. But we have our own special way of ruling the state based on religion, based on prejudice, based on our own opinions. Why does that get a pass? Doesn't get a pass anywhere else. It's irrational, it's barbaric. We're no longer in the human race, or we're not yet in the human race. We need to become human. So, but these groups rule at the moment, at this point of time. Fortunately, if our souls are immortal, we need to know and prove that for ourselves. Then we won't be at this part of history where it's ruled by this kind of barbarism and division for forever. Once we reach eternity, if we do our work the right way, we'll be able to exhale. And of course, eternity will be much more significant than this single life at this part of history. So groups and human division, or human problems, how can we use the dialectic to understand that? Because the hypothesis is there has to be a logos that communicates. Communicates benefit artfully. That's what makes it an art. Right? Even that quote we got from the Philosophical Midwifery book. Let's bring that up. That's a fun one. Even that quote. It is entirely possible Should memorize it. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. The verification is a kind of proof. Since it is a way of understanding, there's our love of understanding, that is based upon a realization that our mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit. What's that? Art. Necessarily for our benefit. So, whether it's from, let's say, mind, or possibly even self. Socrates has been watching the logos unfold from the self. So mind or self, if it is, which is side A of our dialectic, we can have self itself. So we talk about what is the mind or what is self itself. Then how does it communicate? It communicates beneficially and artfully through, so this would be either mind or self, whatever level you are seeing is the cause of the logos. We're looking for causes. How does it communicate its benefit or art? Through the logos. Art of the logos. So, if this is how reality works, nice in chat, we want to match it. We want our rulers to use the art of the logos. We want anyone in charge to use the art of the logos. If, hey, like any doctor, here we go, any doctor has to have the art of medicine, what's true of the healthy body, and what's false, true and false. That's the art of medicine. And we're recognizing the art of the logos is what we need to reach our excellence or our health. Reach our excellence and reach our health. Purify ourselves from our problems. So if there's a providence communicating benefit, that's the art of the logos. The very thing that Socrates says he needs to pass on. You need to learn the art of the logos. This was when the whole 61% or 60% thereabouts of the way through the text, it all shifted from the doctrine of philosophy. There's the art and practice of death and dying and integrating it with our virtues to have a learning called phronesis that shifted to the art of the logos. You can't just believe this stuff I'm saying. You need the art of the logos. And now we're seeing the significance of it. Okay, so the art of the logos has to come from somewhere. And if we want our rulers, our governance, anyone who's in charge, our boss if we still have capitalism, the teachers, to act as they should, which is what? For our benefit, then they have to match this. The same way we are matching. Ouch, hot where you are. Same way we are matching. So, the art of the logos is how the thing communicates to others. So that thing which we define or match ourselves demonstrates or functions. There's another word for that. Or functions. Self to others. So we need to get this. As a species, we need to evolve to the level of the dialectic, presuming the dialectic can also be applied to not just our individual growth, but the evolution of humanity, like microcosm to macrocosm, within the conversation, within the Phaedo itself, within the dialectic between Socrates and us, within our reflection of what exactly is philosophy and how do we do it, but also within human evolution. It has to, if it's true and universal. So, but also would mean, it has to be human, it has to be our way of understanding our human levels of development as well. So, but we recognized, hey, we ain't there. So this was the ladder up for humanity. We haven't reached this rung, and definitely not this rung. And if there's one higher, because Socrates is saying, hey, these are causes, the mind or self causes the providential art of the logos, but that without which a cause could not be cause is an entirely different matter. So we can hypothesize there's even a level above this, which is the condition for causes. That's an interesting question we can come back to later. Or maybe there's a thing even above excellence. Either way, we're not here. So what's after self to others, if that's the art of the logos? Others to others. What's another way of talking about that? Just division. What's another way of talking about others to others? Groups.
Wow.
Group. Religious groups, cult groups, Peterson groups, Tate groups, fascist groups. Even, I don't know, lots of, you name a group, that's where we are. And of course, groups are divided from other groups, in group and out group. In group versus out group. That's a psychology. Or rather, we recognize that as my cave, good, versus other, bad. This is where we are. Hi, welcome to the chat. And even Socrates says, I would be willing to follow someone if they gave me a sufficient understanding of what would satisfy my understanding of cause. But I didn't find someone. Likewise, in groups, what's the cause of problems? Oh, immigrants. Okay, you're a racist or you're a Republican. What's the cause of problems? Oh, wealth inequality. Oh, okay, you're a progressive. What's the cause of problems? Women. Oh, you're a sexist. Or go join Andrew Tate's group. Be a follower of him. What's the cause of problems? Aliens. Join Heaven's Gate cult or whatever. What's the cause of problems? Heathens. Okay, be a Muslim. Infidels. Be a Muslim. Heathens. Be a Christian. And so on. It's in group versus out group. And that causes, so what's that a cause of? Equals war, division, and war, etc. By the way, division is the name of that step, which is curious. So this is applying the dialectic as a way of understanding human development, where we're at and where we need to get to. So Socrates, what's Socrates doing? Socrates is offering us his anecdote along with a problem we need to solve. How can we show that the soul is immortal and indestructible? Know it and prove it, which is beyond belief, because knowledge and logos is beyond this level. So he's saying you have to, because these are all opinions. That's why it's always that conflict. There is no actual verification. Hey, you believe it because it feels right. Because everyone in my towns are Republican. We hate Democrats here. Everyone in my towns are racist. We hate, insert other here. So the title of today is Socrates' Second Search for Causes. So he's saying, hey, look, I'm searching for causes. What's the cause of things to be the way that they are? Now, people in physics point to the physical world. And if this is where the logo starts, we can say they're below this line in the world of becoming. So what's the cause of Socrates sitting here? His bones and his sinews. Socrates, hang on a second, that's not the cause. I'm sitting here because I think it's good to. I think it's best for me to. I think it's more just for me to sit here. And otherwise my bones and sinews would be making their way to somewhere else. Didn't satisfy me. Someone came along and said mind. That opens the possibility of going from a lover of learning, which can be in physics, physical things, to a lover of wisdom, a philosopher, which has to be about mind, which is above this line. But then he realized, hang on a second, even this guy Anaxagoras, who says mind is the cause of things, he didn't really explain it very well. He kept dropping into physical explanations or causes. But also, if the mind causes things to be the way they are, based on what's best, why it should be the way they are, shouldn't there be a cause for causes? A condition for causes? Wouldn't the condition for causes be even higher? So we can have this dialectic of development and say there's another level above this line. So if this is the line of being, and this is the line of the becoming or the physical, there's even a level beyond this, the conditions for cause. And Anaxagoras didn't even do this one well, and he didn't even mention this higher level. Desire would be one of the causes, but it's not physical, is it? You desire with your mind to do what's good, what you think is best for you, or most beautiful, or most just. By the way, all of these adjectives, what's good, what's best, what's just, what's beautiful, these are all aspects of being, or what is in being. They're all above this line. So physics ain't gonna cut it. Looking through your physical senses ain't gonna cut it. And if we all start looking through our physical senses as a lover of learning, what makes us get into philosophy? What makes us realize we should be directing our understanding to looking at this realm of being, of mind or self, which is non-physical or metaphysical? Because Socrates' whole doctrine of philosophy is to separate your soul from the body. So here's our picture of the soul. Here we are looking through our eyes this way and that way. What's the cause of this growth and decay and things sticking around for a while? It can't be physical. So this is a lover of learning. You can not even get into learning. So if you've got three parts of the soul, our inward part desires things. You could be a lover of desires, lover of riches, and follow Andrew Tate around. That's the cause of things. You ain't got enough money. That's why you're sad, and that's how you get excellent. So everyone who starts a cult or a group and convinces others offers a cause for their problems, the shadow, and what can make them most happy. What's true? How do they heal themselves from what's sick or false, and how do they reach their excellence? Now, most people, unfortunately, are motivated by their inner desires. So someone like Andrew Tate comes along, convinces a lot of people that, hey, you need to be rich to be happy. Someone else comes along, so this part, that's our inward desire. Outward moving part of the soul here, outwardly. Someone says, oh, you know what's the cause of your problems? You're not famous enough. You're not loved enough. Become famous. And you'll follow that person. Because that's a satisfactory or sufficient cause based on where you are. Now, if you're a lover of learning, that's not going to cut it either. So you need to start as a lover of learning, philomethesis, which is virtue, by the way. Desiring with the inward part, learning. Holding on to what you learn is true, even though it feels like other things are true. But you can't stop as a lover of learning because your learning is directed towards the physical world as a human at the beginning. Philomathesis is not yet a philosophia. Wisdom is the virtue of directing your learning to the logos, which is eternal and immortal. Not just opinions, like physics opinions, physics theories. But applying it, what the paradigm of understanding that unfolds through everything, but not just seeing how the logos plays out in the physical world, unfolds down to the physical world in generational creation to understand how to do physics better, or how to play music better, or how to do chemistry better. No. We want to understand the cause of physics, music, and chemistry. Cause of the physical world, because we're not going to be here forever. Hopefully we can do what we need here so we can evolve to this realm. That's what Socrates is saying. That's your purpose. Philosophy is the art and practice of death and dying, separating this soul from the physical world so you can experience truth. So that's a movement from loving learning, not fame, not riches, to loving being. Not just being, loving understanding, dianoia, with the logos being, and experiencing it, nous. That's wisdom. Philos Sophia, love of wisdom. So how do we do that when no one in our culture is talking in this way? No one on Netflix, no one in the Fast and Furious franchise comes in and says, hey Dom, you're interested in the physical world. You want to get money. And you want to get famous for driving fast cars and being a badass. But have you ever wondered what's the cause of these things? What's the cause of you? Or what's going to happen when you die? Or what's the soul? Or what's the thing that wants these things? Cars and money and fame? I've never seen that in the Fast and Furious movies. But then you have to say, oh yeah, maybe, okay, yeah, I want to understand causes. But not of the physical world, of being or mind itself. So how do we make that jump from lover of learning to lover of wisdom? Philosophy, true philosophy. By the way, people call themselves philosophers and they're still here. They're still in the world of moderns, we call them moderns. Philosophy is just opinions, this level. There isn't an actual truth in understanding called logos. There is an actual reality above the physical called being. But Socrates said, hey, if I did find someone who gave me a satisfactory understanding of causes, I'd follow them. So, if somebody appealed to say, hey, the cause of your problem is you ain't rich enough, or you ain't famous enough, maybe you'd follow them, and that's where cults start, that's where religions start, that's where groups start, that's where, all sorts of groups start. But we want to master the art of the logos. That's the kind of learning that takes you from here to here, and maybe even from here to what's even beyond reality. Because these are the causes, like you said, desire, cause of the physical occurrence. Both. Yes, if there are physical experiences, if there are things in the physical world, if there are examples of a beautiful thing, three beautiful things, you want to go from the adjectives, beauty used as an adjective, to what's the noun? What's the cause of beauty in this person, and in this dog, and in this painting? Or principles like, if gravity is equal, here's a example of an equal gravity. Here's a example of gravity. What's the cause of principles themselves? And equally in chat asking, what about your people's actions? Yes, Socrates is saying, hey, he's not sitting in this prison cell because his physical body is making him do it. His mind is saying it's good. So that means there has to be something called mind that wants the good. By the way, good itself is not a good thing, it's the good. So you need to be in philosophy, because the good itself the beauty itself, the justice itself, they are all aspects of being. So Socrates, even though no one around him was talking in this way, he recognized that physical causes are stupid. They're not satisfying to him. Someone needs to be talking about this. And not only that, if there is justice itself in being, if there are equality, sameness itself in being, beauty itself, what's keeping all these causes together? Because causes are one thing, the conditions for causes are quite another. So there needs to be a level above being. Now, if there are these levels to reality that we have to progress to do what we're here to do and to actually find the cause of our problems, not immigrants or because we're poor or because we're not famous enough, and the cause of our highest goal, to reach our destiny, to be virtuous, to seek the truth, isn't giving money to rich people in capitalism, isn't following famous people or politicians who have fame, but what is actually the cause? Well, we're saying that's the art of the logos. Socrates is saying that's the art of the logos. The art of the logos gives you what you need to reach being and maybe beyond, and to see the shadow of this, which is the cause of our problems, which is assigning a false cause. Hey, if it's the shadow of being that makes someone convincing, before we were able to learn the art of the logos, when a parental figure shouted at us, "Don't you bloody do that." Wow, that was really strong. And they seem to be passing on a important teaching, which seems to be caring because it's to benefit me. They really say, "I'm going to teach you a lesson." Really? Teaching me a lesson? That's caring. Oh, and they're so sure they're going to yell at me. This appearance of knowing, appearance of care, appearance of teaching, that's the shadow of being. So the cause of our false beliefs against ourself that we examine and remove in dream analysis and midwifery, that cause is not the real cause. Our problems are caused by having a false cause. Because what should be telling us the truth about reality is the actual thing that this is a shadow of. True beauty, true caring, true teaching, true wisdom. That's the enlightenment experience. That's the initiation Socrates is talking about. When you actually experience truth, you realize, hey, these priests or teachers or parents who I thought were true were bullshit. They're wearing masks. They were not the real cause of truth. So all of these false ideas about myself, that my logos is not good, my mind is not good, my self goals are not good, and I have to give money to them or follow them or do what they say, that's all nonsense. All these feelings of inadequacy about your own thinking, your own mind, and your own self are false because it's not the true cause of truth. That's waking up. That's purifying from problems. Now, if we see there's a levels to causes, and by the way, people who want to appear knowing say there is no logos, there is no being, and there is no art to climb that ladder, which is interesting because that's the opposite of the truth. So, if there is actually a logos, an actual understanding and paradigm, we should be able to use it to understand these levels of causes. So that's what we're doing here. The dialectic, 4 categories. Well, if it is, and 4 categories if it's not inside B, but we're only on this. Well, we want the art of the logos, which has to come from somewhere. So it's either coming from mind or self. Either mind in being, or maybe the cause of being. So this is a loose hypothesis, maybe. But what does it do? It communicates providentially to us through the art of the logos. So it's a functioning. So the first category of the dialectic is what's the thing itself? Self itself. Definition. The second is demonstration, or how it functions. Self to others. So that's the category where we can find the art of the logos. But what's before that division? Because this is the realm of being, because something called mind has to function with the art of the logos, unfold it down. That's not physical. The art of the logos isn't physical. It's a very, very high functioning, perhaps the highest functioning, which is why this text we're reading could be the greatest hero story. Very high functioning, but it's a functioning through mind. You don't see a logos. You don't see reasoning and language. So it's functioning. We have a category for functioning the dialectic, self to others, how it demonstrates, how this thing here demonstrates. So if we're looking to see human evolution and our problems in humanity, we can say, oh, our problems is we are below this line. We haven't evolved yet to the stage where we're above this line and we can participate or share in the art of the logos. Receive the art of the logos from mind and function with it artfully ourselves. What's below this? Groups. So self to self, that's number 2. Self to others. So the self, mind, how it functions to others. Now others to others. How do people relate to themselves in groups? That's where we are. No logos. So if you're in a group, like you're Muslim or you're Christian or, pick a religion, ain't no logos in them. By definition. Because religion means bound by belief. Logos is not belief. It's beyond belief. It's understanding. Therefore, everybody can play. There's no divisions. Understanding is true for everyone. Everyone can understand 2 + 2 = 4. You don't have to belong to a group. You don't have to subscribe to a belief. It's just for everyone. Everyone can count 2 lollies and 2 lollies and have 4 lollies and enjoy those lollies. Yum, 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 yum. It can bring us together. It can solve our problems. But if you haven't reached the level of logos, understanding, you're at the level of belief. You're here. Understanding isn't physical. Opinions are based on physical perceptions or physical groups. That's where we are. In-group versus out-group, which is a hangover from our early evolution. Before we had language, the humans that survived said everything outside the cave was bad because it was dark and there were saber-toothed tigers and things. So just blindly obey everything inside your cave. My cave good, outside cave bad. And this is what groups do. Christians are good, others are heathens. And we can have the Inquisition and kill them. Go to war against them. Muslims are good, others are heretics or infidels. Republicans are good, everyone else is bad. And we're going to hate them and own the libs and all that crap. Group thinking, which is the cause of division and war, civil discord. Socrates says civil discord. By the way, division is the name of this step of the dialectic. So we can understand, number 1, the nature of problems. What's the nature of problems? Division. Rich versus poor. Notice, verse. Rich versus poor. Your country versus my country. White versus black. Muslim versus Christian. Israel versus Palestine. And so on. Always go through the pages of human history. It is written in blood because of this. Now what we want to do is add understanding. It's no good you saying, oh yeah, humans have problems. Humans are always at war. Some people who only stay at this say, oh, because in the physical world, like this guy looking for causes in his physical world, say, oh, because humans are always at war, therefore nothing above being, therefore it's good to be at war. Therefore capitalism is good. That's why killing other people is good. It's the law of nature, survival of the fittest. That kind of bollocks. Because they have no principle above looking at physical things. They are not yet reached the level of logos, understanding. They have opinions, and that's Jordan Peterson. Look at these lobsters. The lobsters, which are physical, look at how they fight other lobsters to maintain a hierarchy based on aggression. Therefore, it's good to be a big angry man fighting women and fighting other people because physical world says so. The physical world, we understand, has a cause greater. It is a reflection or a shadow, just like our problems are a shadow of truth, so too is our physical world of becoming transitory. We ain't going to live here forever. It's a shadow of something more real and causal. So we can understand, hey, all of our problems could be given one word: division. It's always verse. So we're not just looking at the physical world, we're understanding the cause. We're looking to causes. What Socrates is saying we must do. Now, if we look to cause, we can, what's the next stage of the dialectic? Stage 4, there's only 4. Synthesis analysis. We need to synthesize what we see in the world, all of these divisions. So how can we unify all of the conflict? Well, what's the nature of religious war or capitalism inequality or slavery or tyranny or petty tyranny in capitalism? Division. One word summarizes the cause of all human problems: division. Now, what's interesting is division is literally the name of that third category of the dialectic. So our hypothesis is, if there is a true understanding that is universal, it should not only apply to music and geometry and how the planets move, it should also apply to humans, which was your question in chat. Causes of not just physical occurrences, but people's actions. Absolutely right. So we should be able to use the dialectic to understand human problems and human evolution. And we've got it. We've got the name for all human problems, and we've got the cause: group. Groupthink. Who runs the world? Groups. Republicans, capitalists, businessmen, corporations, monopolies, all groups that have power against others. That's why humans could go extinct very soon. That's the significance of needing to awaken philosophy. That's why I'm doing this channel. One of the reasons. Now, what's the remedy? Well, we can put a line here. So not only can the dialectic understand the nature of human problems, we can understand it. We can understand the levels of causes. We could say, hey, below this line is the realm of becoming, the physical, change. Why? Well, there's a certain logos in the world of becoming. It's hot and then cold. Hungry and then eat the food, now I'm well fed. It's a back and forth of opposites that are in competition with each other. That's the logos, or the kind of reasoning in the physical world. Which means if we realize, hang on a second, that doesn't answer anything. I'm not sitting here because I'm a mindless monster thinking I'm going to get stuff if I sit here. No. I'm here because I think it's the best thing to do. My mind has decided to do it. Therefore, above this line is the world of being. If we're applying the dialectic to understand human evolution or stages of humanity. Why? Because mind is in the realm of being, and demonstration, self to others, is the functioning of mind. So what's the cause of human problems? Being here. What's another way of saying it? Not being here. So what's our solution? To find a way of transitioning from division to demonstration. Using the dialectic as the paradigm, the model. It's not opinion, it's just the way it is. It's truth. It's wonderful that we can simplify our understanding through the dialectic. Now, what are we doing? We are using our understanding of the logos and its structure of the dialectic, that's the structure of the logos, to provide benefit. What is it called when you use an understanding of a paradigm to provide benefit? Art. The art of medicine. There needs to be a paradigm of a healthy body. There needs to be a way of understanding that, and there needs to be a use of it to benefit. That's art. So what are we doing by having this reflection? We are literally learning and applying the art of the logos. We're doing specifically what needs to be done to move from here to here. Because what's that transition point? The art of the logos. You have to learn this so that you can use it to understand the mind, so you can actually experience it yourself, self to self, being itself. And if we go back to Socrates, really early on in the text, his okay, let's go right back. His doctrine of philosophy, his first thing he said, his definition, before we went through these divisions in the text and demonstrations of his art, when he simply defined philosophy really early on, he gave us a yoga. He synthesized it in a little paragraph. He said, look, this is philosophy. Here it is. Okay. So through the logos, to separate the soul from the body as far as possible, to be accustomed to gather herself together from all quarters. So it's separating from the world of becoming. So what we just saw, we're seeing reflected in the text, which is important. To collect self by self out of the body. Self by self out of the body. Both now and in the future. This liberation of the soul from the body is called death. So practicing philosophy in the right way is the study, exercise of the philosophers, and that's therefore those who practice philosophy correctly are studying to die and fear death least. They are desirous to have their soul self by self. Let's take it back to our work. To have our soul what? Self by self. Right here. What is it? Out of the body. As if, he used the word, as if freed from chains. Purification. So this is a purification through the art of the logos to get the self by self, to reach here. And it's in the world of being, which is out of the body, which the body is physical in the world of becoming. So we need to do this ourselves. To practice philosophy rightly for ourselves, for our evolution, for our growth, and for our reincarnation, to reincarnate properly, to die well. And by the way, if this is separating into this realm self by self, he actually used that word, separate from the body self by self. If that's death, then we're practicing dying. So we're going to know what it's like to die. And if we're using the logos, which is understanding, to get there, we're going to understand it too. If we know it and understand it, then we can use it artfully to benefit. Now we've got an art. Now we're like Socrates, heroic. We can use it to solve these problems that humans are suffering from, which we can define as simply division, by understanding the art of the logo, so we can diagnose, which is what we just did, diagnose the problems that we're at because we're simply here, but also prescribe a medicine, which is the art of medicine, using it as a metaphor. What's our medicine? This. How do we get there? The Phaedo. The Phaedo is the medicine. Socrates saying, literally, you need to learn this stuff. What happens after Socrates? This was destroyed. After Socrates, the Romans came in and they wanted to replace understanding with opinion and faith and division based on what? Groups. religious groups. So that's the betrayal of Socrates. But now we have this translation of Socrates' words. We can go back to where we left off and diagnose ourselves with the art of the logos and take our medicine. Not just medicine, but personal training. Medicine is curing us from our illness, but physical training, once you've got a healthy body, you need to get to the gym to get the excellence of your body. Health and excellence. So we can say this is a good cause. And this model is a good way of understanding the cause of our problems, fate, and our excellence, destiny. Now, Socrates says, by the way, if these are the causes in mind, there might be another level above there. The conditions for the causes are something very conditions. So we've got a puzzle. What if we can use the dialectic to understand the movement from becoming to being, from our ignorance, problems, division, well, all war and conflict, division. We can even understand my cave good, outside cave bad, the historical and evolutionary origins of the appeal of this problem. Therefore, it's not a blame game. We can understand that all problems are solutions that no longer work. So it's a kind of solution that brought us to this period of time. But in this period of time, we have the technology and the amount of oppression that can destroy humanity and the planet. So therefore, we don't have time to muck around anymore. So it's very important that we pick up Socrates' teaching and learn the art of the logos right now, and we can because we have the text. And we're seeing in our reading that the past translations haven't had the right words. They literally don't have the word logos in it. So how the heck can we learn the art of the logos if the logos ain't mentioned? But you and me are in a very curious, puzzling time in history where we are seeing the tragic implications of that, but also we have the ability to learn that. This is the channel. This is philosophy, real philosophy. We have what we need to do this. We have what we need to purify and perfect humanity and ourselves, while also being at a part of history where we are suffering the worst possible implications of not being there, not evolving, being below this line. And how do we get there? Search for true causes. Don't join a group of people who say the cause of your problems is immigrants, or your cause of the problems are Democrats, or your cause of the problems is you ain't rich enough, or the cause of your problems is you ain't famous enough, or the cause of your problems is you didn't make your bed in the morning. Socrates says, I was willing to do that. Fortunately, there was nobody around offering me a decent cause, so I didn't. I had to figure it out myself. And we want to know how Socrates went from learning in this realm of becoming physics, through physical senses. How did he start getting into this kind of learning? Go from a love of learning, philomathesis, to lover of this philosophy, lover of wisdom. Because wisdom is the art of the logos directed towards being. How did he make that jump? Because literally we need to ourselves, because we're going to keep suffering until we do it. And we're not going to find, there's not going to be a Netflix series where a Kramer or a Phoebe or a Spider-Man, whoever, comes in and says, hey, by the way, have you ever wondered what the real cause of things are? Like, hey, Batman, are we really solving problems by punching with our physical fists? Maybe there's a cause beyond physical expressions of the mind. And by the way, every time I beat up a villain, next episode there's a new villain. Maybe we're not addressing the cause of problems. Hey, person in this sitcom, we are suffering because we're poor, but hopefully we find a way of getting money and then we're happy for a short amount of time. But why is that a problem? What's the cause of wealth inequality and poverty in society? We don't find them. They're not at school. Philosophers are in this tradition, the Latin tradition. That's what modern philosophy is. Stoic, materialist, empiricist, all that stuff. And we can even say, hey, by the way, that's Aristotle. Xenophanes asked, what is the whole? That can take you out of the physical world. That's a good question. What is the whole of your physical senses? What's the whole of all seeing? Not a particular, not an example. What is the whole of seeing and the whole of hearing and the whole of experience? What's the whole of the whole? Some people have even added to that question, what is the whole and what is watching right now? So maybe even beyond mind. But Xenophanes, he taught Parmenides. Parmenides taught Socrates, the dialectic. And here's where it stopped. Socrates was killed by the state before he was able to pass on his teaching sufficiently to Plato. And then Plato wasn't able to apply the art of the logos to remove Aristotle's problem. And Aristotle's problem is specifically, he's stuck in the physical world. He rejects the mind. He rejects metaphysics. And that's the modern tradition. Plato didn't call him a philosopher. Plato called him a brain. The modern tradition of philosophies, they refer to Aristotle. They call him the philosopher. Stoicism, same thing. It's just in the world of becoming. It's using the language of Socrates' virtues and just applying it to the physical world. And of course, he taught Alexander the Great, who was in the Roman tradition, the Latin tradition, and they didn't even have a word for the. They could only use a particular thing. So their language. And they killed the philosophers and they banned it. Began the Dark Ages. You couldn't have a text, you couldn't read, you couldn't develop understanding, you had to believe. So that's understanding the causes historically of where we are. Now, this is understanding the paradigm of where we are. And understanding the importance of this. Finding the true cause. Now, so we are like Socrates. We're not going to find it in the world because we're in this tradition. Aristotle, Roman, Latin, physical, groupthink, caveman, barbarians. That's where we are. We need to go here. So where are we going to look? Who's going to ask us that question about being? To turn us from a lover of learning, because if you're in this channel, you're not following wealth or fame, you're interested in learning. What's going to turn us around to philosophy? Well, don't know. But Socrates is going to give us his account. He calls that his second search for causes. With all that in mind, let's jump in. Big introduction there. So those in chat or those joining late, or maybe it's always good to reflect and revise. It's always different, by the way, because every day we learn something new, which means our revisions are going to be seeing even a greater depth because we are leveling up. So, one of those causes that we can only awaken the art of the logos now is the past translations have lacked the key words needed for the art of the logos. It's like learning the art of medicine without knowing what a femur is or a spleen. We didn't believe in spleens until only recently. It's going to be hard to do medicine if you don't believe in spleens. So, and with that in mind, we are going to recognize as we read that there are going to be keywords missing. This is pre-Balboa translations. The Balboa translation gives us the Greek and gives us the actual words we need. Often they are in Greek because we don't have an English version like logos, dianoia, nous, phronesis. We don't have an English version of that word. So we're going to read this one first because it's kind of has a bit of more of a flow to it. But we're going to miss the keywords and then we're going to see that and go, oh, that's why we're stuck. And then we're going to jump into the Balboa and get those keywords and master the art of the logos and become heroes. Which sounds cheesy to say, but it's true. Can you be cheesy and true? Maybe cheesy means you're true, but I don't know. I think you can be cheesy and true. Anyway, let's jump in. I would gladly be the pupil of anyone, says Socrates, who would teach me the nature of such a cause. But since this was denied me, and I was not able to discover it myself, or learn it from anyone else, do you wish me, Cebes, to give you an account of the way in which I conducted my second voyage in quest of the cause? Well, thankfully for us, Cebes says, I wish it with all my heart, and so do we, with all of our hearts and all of our minds. After this, then, said Socrates, since I had given up investigating realities, I decided that I must be careful not to suffer the misfortune which happens to people who look at the sun and watch it during an eclipse. For some of them ruin their eyes unless they should look at its image in water, or something of the sort. I thought of that danger, and I was afraid my soul would be blinded if I looked at things with my eyes and tried to grasp them with any of my senses. Interesting. Going away from his senses. So I thought I must have recourse to conceptions and examine in them the truth of realities. Curious metaphor or reason to go from his senses to his conceptions. Now, I'm guessing conceptions isn't conceptions in the Greek, but let's keep reading. Now, perhaps my metaphor is not quite accurate. We just said that. For I do not grant in the least that he who studies realities by means of conceptions is looking at them in images, any more than he who studies them in facts of daily life. Right, so it's not a good metaphor. So you don't want to look directly at an eclipse, so you look at its reflection in the water. So I don't want to look at reality directly with my physical senses. I'm going to look at them in conceptions. But he says, actually, no, that's a bad metaphor. Because if by looking at them through conceptions, which I think probably is ideas or maybe logos, it's more accurate than the facts of everyday life. So he can see the inadequacy of the physical world, which is interesting because earlier in the text he said all physical things seek being, but are incapable because of the inherent inadequacy of them being physical. So that's a way of understanding all physical things. So here we're seeing like the origins of this teaching he's already given us, which is cool. Even sticks seek equality itself, but are always by their nature going to fall short by being physical. However, that is the way I began. I assume in each case some principle which I consider strongest, and whatever seems to me to agree with this, whether relating to cause or anything else, I regard as true, and whatever disagrees with it, untrue. Alright? Sound familiar? Pick up a principle or a hypothesis, separate it into what's true and untrue. Remind you of anything? Side A and side B. If it is and if it isn't. If it is and if it isn't. Curious? Let's keep reading. But I want to tell you more clearly what I mean, for I think you do not understand now. I think you do not understand now, says Socrates. Not very well, certainly, says Cebes. Well, says Socrates, this is what I mean. It is nothing new, but the same thing I have always been saying, both in our previous conversation and elsewhere. So we can even anticipate the poor translation. We could, I wonder if he says the Logos has we've used this logos many times, or the self logos has made clear many times before, or we have followed this same self logos many times in the past. Maybe, it's a guess. Just the kind of language that he's using here. The more we become familiar with Socrates, the more we can kind of anticipate or prophesize what he might be saying. But okay, that's a fun guess. Let's see if it pans out. But the same thing I've always been saying, both in our previous conversation and elsewhere. I am going to try to explain to you the nature of that cause which I have been studying, and I will revert to those familiar subjects of ours as my point of departure, and assume that there are such things as absolute beauty and good and greatness and the like. It's going to assume that there are such things as being. Kind of necessary to start. Like, if you start off by thinking there's no such thing, how can you even begin philosophy? Hang on, my thing's just broken. My mic stand is back working, kind of. Let's keep reading. Right, okay, so I will use familiar subjects to explain the nature of the cause I've been studying, but I have to assume that those things like absolute beauty and the good and greatness, so what we can, again, we're familiar enough with Socrates to guess that the real word is probably self-beauty, self-good, or self-greatness. If you grant this, that these things exist, and agree that these exist, I believe I shall explain cause to you, and shall prove that the soul is immortal. Cool. Interesting. In chat, somebody has a fairy that's currently listening and drawing his dreams. Oh, right. Fairy like Daemon. Or a daemon like fairy. Okay, so he's going to explain cause and prove that the soul is immortal, so long as we grant him the existence of reality beings. You may assume, says Cebes, that I grant it, and go on. Then, said Socrates, see if you agree with me in the next step. I think that if anything is beautiful besides absolute beauty, it is beautiful for no other reason than because it partakes of absolute beauty. And this applies to everything. Do you assent to this view of cause? Right? For all these beautiful things we see in the particulars, in the world of becoming. Good thing we did that little summary a little while ago. Necessarily is beautiful because it partakes in beauty itself. I do. Now, I do not yet understand, nor can I perceive, those other ingenious causes. If anyone tells me that what makes a thing beautiful is its lovely color, or its shape, or anything else of that sort, I let all that go, for these things confuse me. And I simply hold, and plainly, and perhaps foolishly, to this, that nothing else makes it beautiful but the presence or communion, call it what you please, of absolute beauty, however it may have been gained. About the way in which it happens. About the way in which it happens, I make no positive statement as yet, but I do insist that beautiful things are made beautiful by beauty. For I think this is the safest answer I can give to myself or to others. And if I cleave fast to this, I think I shall never be overthrown. And I believe it is safe for me or anyone else to give this answer. That beautiful things are beautiful through beauty. Do you agree? Beautiful things are beautiful through beauty. I agree. I do agree. And great things are great and greater things greater by greatness, and smaller things smaller by smallness. Yes. And you would not accept the statement if you were told that one man was greater or smaller than another by a head, but you would insist that you say only that a greater thing is greater than another by nothing else than greatness, and that it is greater by reason of greatness. And that which is smaller by nothing else than smallness, and smaller by reason of smallness. Or would you, I think, be afraid of meeting with the retort, if you said a man was greater or smaller than another by a head, first that the greater is greater and the smaller is smaller by the same thing, and secondly, that the greater man is greater by a head, which is small, and that is a monstrous thing, that one is great by something that is small. Would you not be afraid of this? Okay, so a lot to unpack here. First of all, he's going back to where he started. So, if we're learning the art of the logos, we can recognize that Socrates is using his own understanding of his own experience to understand and communicate with his friend Cebes here. Because he used to say something is taller by, a head is a kind of funny thing. How about a meter? A tall man is taller by a meter. Right? That's a physical thing. It's a meter. I guess head is even more physical, so I guess that's probably why he's using the word head. But a physical measurement. But hey, that kind of doesn't make sense because the smaller is smaller by a meter too. So is meter the cause? Because of meter, someone is small and someone is tall? When you think about it, it doesn't make sense because they're opposites. But also, hey, meter is kind of short. So someone is made taller by something that's short? That's like saying something is made cold by something that's hot. Fire makes something freezing. That doesn't make sense. Also, he pokes a hole in this idea that, things are beautiful because of color. Well, hang on a second. Some things have the same color, but they're not beautiful. Why do we recognize certain things as beautiful and others not? Now, we can also see the kind of problems that moderns get into. If they are by nature of the tradition, the rule from the groups in the past, the Emperor Justinian and the Catholic Church, and saying, you must not talk about mind, only the physical world, otherwise off with ye head. If that's our tradition, which modern scholars are in that tradition, until we awaken the Logos, of course, so it's not a blame game, it's an invitation to share in the Logos. They struggle because they have to use colors or physical things, and they really struggle. This is attractive because this frequency of color is more appealing. Doesn't really answer it. Sometimes they'll point to evolutionary theory. Yes, people like this because of good for passing on our genes. This physical, she's beautiful because of physical big breasts indicate can be a good mother. Hang on a second. There's a lot of beautiful women who don't have big breasts. That doesn't make sense. They struggle pointing to physical things for reasons. Obviously, it's not a physical thing that causes beauty. You know this yourself. You might see someone walking down the street. Oh, that's a beautiful person. They get closer. They're not beautiful. Oh, I was mistaken. Hang on a second. It can't have been your physical senses because they were mistaken. As the poets often tell us, we can be tricked by our physical senses. So what did you recognize? Or remember? Or intuit? He's helping us out by being modest and saying, oh, maybe I'm foolish to say this is what causes beauty, but I'm going to stick with it. It's going to really, what he's saying is, these people who say color and shape is the cause of beauty, that's stupid and that's foolish. And we're going to run around in circles unless I kind of cut to the chase and say it's by sharing in absolute beauty or beauty itself that things, the presence or communion with absolute beauty make things beautiful. So he's starting to lead CBs through question and answer, through the dialectic, assuming you have to assume the forms exist to begin. Now that's interesting because his teacher Parmenides said, here, so you can see it. You have to permit the ideas of real beings to be. Keep your mind fixed on your counterattacks or objections. Define each particular idea, that's dianoia or understanding. You have to allow that each idea of the real beings is always of self. This is the power of dialectics. So early on in Socrates' career, when he met up with Parmenides, he began in this way. You have to start by allowing them to exist. If you don't allow being to exist, you're kind of not going to get anywhere. You're kind of putting a limit. You're cutting yourself off the knees. Because that's what we want to reach. It's like saying, people who are moderns and think, oh, there is no truth or understanding. How can you begin the quest for truth if you're already convinced there is no truth? Which is why a lot of propaganda networks, brainwashing networks, politicians and so on say, oh, there is no truth. It's just opinion, so just vote, right? That way I can manipulate opinion. I can't be held to a standard and I can be as corrupt as I want. That's the condition we're in now. And they get away with it by rejecting the existence of truth. And also, it keeps the masses stupid. Because how can you pursue the truth? The paradigm against which you should hold everyone accountable, especially people in positions of power, how can you even search for truth if you're convinced it doesn't exist to begin with? You have to permit the ideas of real beings to be, to start with. So, we can recognize that in what Socrates is doing, because he's not just doing it, he's breaking it down for us so we can follow. Because we need to do it ourselves. This is important. We need to learn the art of the logos. He said, look, you have to grant me the existence of the beings, number one. Number two, kind of be humble. You know, Socrates, and you with the art of the logos, that this physical way of explaining things through color and shape is foolish. In fact, nowadays there's like a saying to talk to somebody who is very ignorant or doesn't reflect or is dumb. He's moved by colors and shapes. I've heard a lot of streamers talk that way. It's funny. So we know that's foolish, but who cares? It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about following the truth. So you can be humble. Say, oh, maybe I'm foolish. Maybe they're foolish. It doesn't matter. So that's a way of going through the art. That's a kind of a charm, a grace through which you move through the dialectic. He's given a couple of different arguments, beauty and greatness and smallness. One is, so give a couple of examples to illustrate, which is what? 2 is enough to establish a pattern. If you've given a couple, it's enough for the person you're talking with to think about what the principle might be. He began with his caveat. These are the rules if you want to play. Which was if you grant me these rules, which is what? I'm going to use a language familiar with us. Makes sense, right? Use metaphors or use a language that your friend is familiar with. I'm going to try and explain the nature of cause. Tell them what you want to do. This is what I want to get to. I want to explain the nature of cause with you, which I've been studying. I will use the familiar subjects of ours as our point of departure. We're going to start with where we're together. We're going to start together. Right, you got it in chat. So we're going to start with somewhere familiar, common language. Number one. So yeah, tell them what you're going to do. Give the nature of cause. Tell them you're going to start with something familiar with, where we're both familiar with. Cool. Assume that the ideas have to exist. You kind of can't reach truth unless you recognize that you have to allow for it to exist to begin with as a hypothesis. You might prove that it doesn't. And also tell them why. Why are you going to prove the nature of cause? Using familiar subjects, assuming the beings exist. I shall explain cause to you and prove that the soul is immortal. So this is the why. Why should we care? Why should we care about philosophy? Why should we master the art of the logos? Why should we awaken philosophy? That's underpinning a lot of our reflections today and every day. Every podcast. So here, why am I going to prove the nature of cause? Explain the nature of cause? To prove the soul is immortal. So we need to pick apart these elements, division, so we can understand. So yeah, introduce it, give some caveats, invite the person. You don't have to play. If you allow the beings to exist, I will demonstrate the nature of cause so that I can prove the soul exists. And I will start with familiar language. Do you want to play? And now we could unpack each step. Is first step. So this is the next step. So the first step was the introduction. The next step is, so that's his kind of definition of the dialectic. And this is his first demonstration, his first argument. Anything is beautiful because beauty itself, absolute beauty. And it's beautiful for no other reason that it partakes of absolute beauty, and this applies to everything. Do you assent to this view of cause? So that's a kind of demonstration. It's kind of like, this is it in a nutshell. He says, I do. But, okay, this is also part of the logos. He might say he does, but if you're the one with the art, you have to judge whether or not he's actually on board. He may think he does, but he might not be with you yet. Like a dentist. Are you flossing every day? Yeah, I do. I do. I don't think you do, says the dentist. I can see. Because I have the art of dentistry. I do not yet understand, nor can I perceive those other ingenious causes. Those confuse me. So, okay, so it is this and it isn't. So there we've got A and B. Side A, what beauty is, participating in the idea of beauty, and what it isn't. It isn't physical things. Now notice, this is side A and B of the dialectic. You floss, okay, good. But he's hitting both sides. Notice, our goal is to transition from the world of becoming, which it's not existence. That's what makes it becoming. It doesn't have an eternal absolute truth. We want to go from that world to the realm of being. So we're saying, hey, beauty is partaking in this realm of being. It's not physical things. That's side B. So if you were to do a dialectic, you would say, well, I mean, he is doing a dialectic, but it's kind of in his head. He's using it. He's seeing through it. You would say, okay, well, yeah, if beauty is, and if it isn't. If it is, if it isn't. Now, is means exists. If beauty exists, it means the realm and being. So dialectic necessarily requires existence for it to even start, because that's side A. If beauty exists, if being exists, if philosophy exists, if the dialectic exists, all of these things we're interested in. If it isn't, one way of saying it isn't is its only existence is in the realm of becoming. So one example that we did earlier was if philosophy exists, what would you say about it itself to self, its definition, its truth, its destiny, its our purpose, all these sorts of things. But what about side B? What would you say it is self to self if it doesn't exist? In other words, if it only exists in the physical world, you would say it's illusion or it's opinion. We're not saying philosophy, we're not negating the subject. We're saying it doesn't exist. It still has a kind of existence as its shadow. This is the shadow of the ladder. So what would you say? Well, that's modern philosophy. It's opinion. It's illusion. It's arguing. It's all these sorts of things would be inside B. And notice we're doing the same thing with humanity. What if humanity was able to participate in the logos? Or what if humanity could be that kind of existence? And what if it isn't? If it isn't, humanity would be in division, humanity would be in discord, humanity would be in war, humanity would only be interested in opinions, humanity would have people claiming to be wise when they're not, and so on. In fact, we needed to do this. What if there's only the world of becoming? We needed to do this to understand where we're at as a society, why we have the problems we have. And Socrates is hitting both. Let's define what makes things beautiful, and let's define what it isn't inside B. It's not color, it's not shape. These are foolish. He's hitting both. Right. So what is sitting? What isn't it? It's not standing. Or it's not cold. What is hot? What if hot exists? What isn't it? It's not cold. Or we could say, well, see, we're talking about existence. So what if hot exists in being is? You could say, what if it doesn't exist in being? Hot is an illusion. It's just neurons firing. It's the Matrix, that kind of thing. So with that in mind, okay, so that's what it is. A quick demonstration. This is what it isn't. I make no positive statement as yet, but I do insist that beautiful things are made beautiful by beautiful. So he makes no positive statement of how. How do we share in the being? That's what we want to know. So he's going to get there. So I'm holding true to this theory. I think I shall never be overthrown. I believe it's safe for me or anyone else to give the answer that beautiful things are beautiful through beauty, and greater things through greatness. So now he's gone from one example, one demonstration to another. You could say maybe now we're in division, dividing it to the different examples. Now he starts with what it isn't. He starts with what it is. You're made greater through greatness. You're made smaller by smallness. And then side B, you're not made greater by a physical thing, by a head. You're a head taller. Because that makes me, I'm a head, so a head makes me taller, but it makes him shorter? How can the same thing do opposites? That doesn't make sense. So you are taller than your friend because of something to do with tallness, not because of a meter or a head. So he's doing the same, side A and side B for both. So what are we doing? We're following what he's doing, how he's doing it, so we can master the art of the logos. Now, Next time, we're going to go through the rest of this argument in this, and then we're going to jump over to the Balboa to get the terms right. So we've seen a lot today, and thankfully, we've had some good questions in chat, so we could summarize. And also, we've seen the stakes of what we're doing. We've seen more about the stakes. We've seen more about the implications to humanity. We've understood how, we've looked at how to apply the dialectic artfully to understanding humanity, and also understanding what Socrates is doing, the micro and macrocosm. Socrates needs to go from the physical to the realm of being. And he starts by an example of something that's easy to see. Beauty itself is in being. So beautiful things have to somehow share in that. He's not saying how yet, but that's the key. We need to make that jump from beautiful thing to beauty itself. Just as Socrates went from learning about physical things, heads of horses, to learning about being itself. Just as humanity has to go from all the problems we're facing, but by this lower stage of evolution, this lower way of thinking, groupthink, opinions, physical, world of becoming, to learning the art of the logos, that which can unify and benefit. We have rulers that don't have the art of ruling, which is the art of the logos. So we need to find out how, because if we find out that we have what we have because of being, that it is the cause, we also need to find out how, so we can make this jump for our souls, and maybe even secondarily humanity can make that jump so we can evolve and save our species. On that bombshell and on that cliffhanger, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you for joining me in chat. Like we said before, we've got a Patreon now if you want to support the channel, and if you have the means. Of course, if you don't, that's completely fine too. You can join the Discord, the chat there, and join the community there. You can follow along live on Twitch. Thank you for joining me today on Twitch. And you can find all of the videos on YouTube. We are going to try some new things for the channel as well. A watch along. And on Fridays, you can join live on Twitch for the recording of Mindy Mandal's channel, which is all about Platonism, where we have a read-along. We're reading The Republic. I think we're in book 7. They're posted to her channel. Please follow that. They're really, really good. She produces really good content there. And if you join me on Fridays, Australia time, which I think is Thursday America time, you can join me on Twitch to jump in the chat and watch it recorded in live time. So again, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.